this, and I was really afraid of leaving the marital home and not walking away from the money, but also walking away from what was my home for 10 plus years, right? So and we're live.
Hi, friends. Welcome to My Divorce Real Estate. I'm Amber Gifford, and this is my husband and business partner and teammate, Scotty Gifford.
It's a lot.
You're a lot. Today, we're going to talk about divorce in your marital home and should you or should you not leave the house? Let's start with, did you leave the house?
I did not during the divorce.
I did not either. But in temporary orders, my ex husband did.
Was he forced out?
No, they didn't come in go, you're getting out. No, but it was agreed upon after a certain time period that we actually shared the house at first during temporary orders, and obviously kids were in school, and so I stayed during the week and he did too, and then the weekends we flopped. I'd take the house for the weekend and go somewhere the next weekend, and he had them, and that was kind of nice.
Yeah, that's interesting. The way you guys did that. I think in our situation, we just kind of stayed in the same house until the divorce was kind of finalized, and then I kind of moved out that week of the finalizing of the divorce.
So there really isn't a rule per se. Do you leave? Do you not? I know a lot of people just go, yeah, I'm leaving. And I will say we host divorce seminars, and we have a family law attorney on board with us. And, she's always said that it is frowned upon by judges if you do leave the home. So it's best if you guys are thinking of divorcing, not to jump ship right away.
Yeah, and I think it's important to talk about why they recommend you not leaving the home too, because some people um, think that, oh, I need to or I have to.
Yeah, you don't have to do anything unless, of course, we want to set this straight. Like there's some sort of abuse going on and it's absolutely necessary. Maybe, too, if it's not an abusive situation, you got a job that's outside of the city and you have no choice but to leave to make money. So understandable, unless it's
Yeah,
necessary. But if your schedule stays the same, for you to leave just to leave because you don't want to be married to this person anymore, you really shouldn't until you get into temporary orders, because it is frowned upon that you kind of left the marital estate and the kids, if you have kids, and walked away.
yeah, and then one thing, the judge isn't going to order you if you left the house. He's not going to order you back into the home, right? So if you wanted to get access to the
True.
home,
He's not going to
he's going to
go.
like, okay, we'll let you back in now, right? So it's like really you're
Yeah.
kind of giving up a lot of your rights there during the during that time frame. That if you want to get back
Yeah.
into there, it's going to be trouble.
So don't leave unless it's absolutely necessary, for one. Another, tip too on this is you need to figure out your money. You got to know
Mm-hmm.
everything that you have, and it's important. If you're being secretive about this, as a lot of people are, because maybe one spouse isn't aware that you're going to be pulling the trigger, you need to go take pictures and of all the documents that you have. Know your bank accounts, know your financial situation. Maybe you guys keep things in a safe, or maybe you're not allowed to see anything but the bills and things come in the desk. If
Mm-hmm.
it was me, I'd be sifting through what is it that we actually have in assets and what don't we have, credit card statements, and
Yeah, well, and they're gonna if you get an attorney, they're gonna ask you all these
mm-hmm.
questions too. They're gonna go, okay, well, what do you own and what do you owe, and and what documentation do you have? Because they're gonna want to help you. In Texas, we're a community property state, and a lot of other states that aren't community property, they're 50-50 division.
Yeah.
So they're gonna pretty much try to split those things, right? And we did a whole video on community property and what that is, and we have a blog post on that if you want to go check that out on the giffordgroup.net too as well. But really, we're just trying to what we're talking about here is the marital home and what else you.
Leaving or not.
Yeah.
And I think too, also, it's important. We had a client one time who was completely in the dark about everything as far as financial in their home, which a lot of people are. So get what you can from it if you're in the home already before you leave. If you were to leave, it comes out anyway in discovery. But if you can come to the table with as much information as possible, the better off you'll be. But the one client I'm referring to, her husband had multiple rental properties.
Yeah.
She slowly but surely figured them out through the course of discovery. However, had she known in the beginning, maybe it wouldn't have taken as long. But he had some 17 rental properties that she at first knew nothing about it, and then things were coming through.
I mean, that's not uncommon for one spouse to kind of handle the money situation,
Right.
right? And so that the other one might kind of be in the dark about those things. But obviously, more information that you do have, the more power you're going to have in this,
Mm.
it's essentially the sad part is kind of like you're dividing a business at some levels, right? So going through the divorce.
Yeah. So know your money before you leave. Take pictures of everything, documentation, whatever it is you can to write it down to get it so you have it before you walk out.
Okay.
So the other thing is too, before you leave a marital home, you kind of need to prepare your mind for parenting apart. Leaving abruptly could like radically change and disturb a household if you have kids.
Yeah.
Maybe even if you don't have kids. I mean, either way, it's hard conversations to have with your family members, your children, extended family members, and maybe you're not ready to answer those questions or even know what to say. So it's not something you should jump ship on like immediately. Like you need to take time to think things through before you go and do that, because you are going to have questions from your children or from other people, neighbors, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, let me speak a little bit on that, my personal story on that too, because I think it's always helpful to hear a story when we're, other people's stories when we're contemplating this. And, I was really afraid of, leaving the marital home and not, walking away from the money, but also walking away from what was my home for, 10 plus years, right? So that was all scary. And so I wasn't going to rush into things. At the time, I thought I was going to buy, end up renting. My ex-wife bought me out using a cash out refi. I wish I'd known about the OT lien, where I could have more of the equity and I could have walked away a little bit more money. It's a whole other videos we talked about. But I think it's just like that fear of moving out was really big on my part. And I was afraid too that the kids wouldn't want to come visit me if I didn't have this big extravagant house still too. So at the end of the day, thankfully, most kids are very resilient and they're not going to care about, the type of home that they're living in as long as you are there, right? And that's what they want to spend time with. They want to spend time with you as the parent, right? So
My kids were fired up over an apartment for my ex-husband. Has a balcony. They thought it was cool. And of course, whatever holiday or season you happen to be into, you gotta, if you're moving out, that's a whole nother video too, but creating a space for them. But again, it's hard conversations to have. So prepare yourself for parenting apart or answering questions if you just jump ship, really quickly. The other thing too is just itemizing your property and your contents that are in it. I mean, maybe there's your grandmother's piano that you're like, that's mine, and I don't want to get rid of that, and I'm not willing to separate that. So know what's in your household and what it is that you're not willing to part with, and what you have in the household and how many properties you have. Maybe you have a beach house too. I mean, those are all things you need to be having photos of and taking documentation, knowing who the mortgagee is. If you guys got bills coming in, take pictures.
Yeah, because remember, all community property and debt is community property debt as well too. So like if there's some things that you don't want to be debts you don't want to be taking on too, then you need to know about those and document those too. If
some random credit card comes in for Discover and you're like, wait, what? Who?
yeah,
That's definitely something that you need to check into.
yeah,
And last but not least, if you're deciding if you should leave the marital home, maybe one of your driving forces is you want to start dating or you have somebody else in mind. To each his own. But although infidelity isn't, total means for divorce, it is frowned upon. And if you're using monies to pay for hotel rooms or extravagant gifts or trips, that is communal funds that you're using to pay for someone else and could be used against you as well. So it's just best to play the straight and narrow card and work through things slowly.
Yeah, definitely. Finish up your marriage and be divorced before you start getting into those things. And I think we talk about that a lot with our clients too. When we're if we talk to them about like, hey, let's focus on what we need to get accomplished now before we start future tripping and worrying about other things. Or it's just stay in the present moment and deal with the problems as they come versus trying to worry about
right. So the biggest takeaway here is, if you're contemplating leaving, don't jump ship. Think through it. Realize that it is kind of frowned upon if you have children and you're leaving the marital home. If you decide to leave really quickly and you don't have documentation, document everything. Know what you have. Know your assets, your debts. Prepare yourselves and your children and your friends like this is what's happening. That's probably the gist of it.
And I think one last thing I'll add, and we'll wrap this up, is that I think that sometimes we think that it's going to be quicker than it is, right? It's a slower process than you want it to be, and likely dividing these assets is going to be a slower process than you want to be. But it's just something that's going to take time to do right.
Yes, and it doesn't feel right when you're doing it, but in the end, things end up better than you probably expected. We promise. So as always, thanks so much for watching, and we're here to bring you real life experiences to all your real estate needs.
Like and subscribe.